Hello, good morning. This is another Wise Women Weekdays event. This morning I'm interviewing Andrew Dunne. Is that how I pronounce your name?
That's me.
Yeah, okay. So we were going to have Kitty as well, but Kitty isn't well this morning, so it's just the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you're well, Kitty, and see you another time. Andrew, you are a breath worker.
I am a breath worker.
Therapist. So
I am.
So tell us about breathwork.
So breathwork, I should perhaps just start talking about when I got into breathwork, which was back in 2009, and I'd never done any kind of holistic therapies before. I wasn't a practitioner of yoga. I think I did very, very little exercise, and actually I was very, very unhealthy. I was a big drinker. I'd been to university, was a big drinker there, and I just carried on and on and on, and really just quite stuck in life. I would say, just a foreboding feeling that there was something not right with me, and a lot of trauma from childhood, which I didn't really realise at the time. And it was all just buried, very suppressed, very buried, ignored, denied, like a lot of us, in this day and age. But I was following a channeler. Her name's Laura Knight-Yadchik, and she's written many, many books, but it was all it was very mind and academic interest, and she writes a lot about sort of alternative history, and but also sort of spiritual issues. But she published on her forum this breathwork system in 2009, and I thought, okay, it was just something intuitively. I thought, right, this is going to be good. I'm going to try this out, even though I had no experience, didn't really know what breathwork was. And it's 3 different types of breath that are strung together in a very, very specific way, very specific rhythms and counts. And I practiced it, I think after the first or second session, I was absolutely blown away. And I think it just helped me get in touch with a part of myself that I hadn't met perhaps since I was a child, really. It was very, very powerful, beautiful experience.
So did you do it by yourself, or did you go to a therapist?
Yeah, it was just an online program, and took me a little while to learn it, but it really helped me get in touch with a part of myself that I think I'd always known was there, but I'd just never been able to reach. I'd never been able to reach that place of peace, of knowing, I mean, it's very experiential breathwork, and we can talk about the science of it, which there's lots, but it really put me in my heart, I think, for the first time, and possibly in my life since I was a child, and that was really just an instant love affair, and that was back in 2009.
And you never look back?
I never looked back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So do you practice regularly?
Yeah, I've been practicing really. It's been a real saviour for me. So I took the practice and ran with it, and I think for many years it was just very personal. I'd practice on my own. There was no group sessions online or anything. I needed the audio with all the rhythms and the counts, and I would sit in my bedroom late at night, almost always doing it before I went to bed, because it would make my dreams just a lot more clarity in my dreams, and I would then wake up in the morning again sort of feeling like a child, and all my senses would come back online. I'd wake up being able to smell better, taste better. I had memories coming back to me. It was like, this process of refinement of all the senses. I've practiced since then, and then back in 2019 I thought, right, I'm actually going to go and study this. I'm going to go and study breathwork in a formal capacity, So I found the Air School of Breathwork, which is sort of based in the West Country of England, with two founding tutors, Brigitte Martin-Powell and Doug Sawyer. And I've spent the last 4 years training with them.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. So has that changed your view of it, or has it changed how you practice, or is it more focused on you working breathwork with other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this school is teaching something called Rebirthing Breathwork, which is I would describe it as more therapeutic rather than meditative. So, and it is working with other people. So there's many different styles of breath work. And I would say, the common ground is they all elicit a similar response, a physiological, mental, emotional, spiritual response. Similar but different. So rebirthing is really, it's working with clients, and they're doing sort of what's called conscious connected breathing. And the practitioner is there as a guide, as a witness, and breath work generally, it can bring up a lot of emotion. So people can have memories coming back of trauma. They can become quite emotional, and not necessarily. I think the really interesting thing about my last 4 years of study has been that you never really know what to expect in a session, and each one is very, very different.
Yeah.
So somebody can have a session where they become very, very emotional. They get in touch with a part of themselves that's quite raw, quite painful, and in sessions on our course, we've had people crying and actually screaming and but then that's our job, is then to be present, to be a witness, to be a guide, and to sort of take people through that journey. But equally, we can you can have sessions that are just very, very gentle, and very, very soothing, very cathartic. And kind of both of those polarities and everything in between.
So my only experience with breathwork is through the Wim Hof. It's actually my son, who you met earlier. He introduced me to the cold showers and the Wim Hof thing. So I signed up, so part of his philosophy is not only the cold showers, is to do the breath work with it.
Yeah.
And you almost bring yourself into hyperventilation, and then you hold the breath, and it's quite amazing what you feel then the moment you hold the breath.
Okay.
And that you suddenly can hold the breath for like 4 or 5 minutes, but inside your body all these different things happen, and this warm glow arises, and I thought it was quite amazing doing his training. Although I don't really do the breath work anymore. I still do the cold showers or the cold sea swimming.
I know you like getting in the sea, Marianne.
Yes.
I've seen you down here in December.
Yes.
We're not far from the sea here, are we?
Yeah, no, we're very close to the sea. Literally 5 minutes walk for me to come out. But even going into the cold, so the body's response of going in the cold is to do that, and then you connect to the breath to like soothe the body and to allow the noradrenaline to come back up, because it's the adrenaline that kicks in, and then through the focusing on the breath and calming the breath, the noradrenaline, and it's kind of helping your body not go into fight and flight, and in other situations as well.
That's really interesting. It's really valuable to hear about that, because actually Wim Hof is the one. Well, it's one of the few types of breath work I've just not done. I think I did one session with my girlfriend, and it was I was really surprised at how much I could hold at the end. You said 5 minutes. I think I did about maybe a minute and a half, maybe 2.
Yeah, when you do, so I did the 10 weeks on the app, and then I signed up, and so you have, when you do that, you have a counter. So the moment you do that and you stop the breath, you just press, and then it's not, and it records, like it keeps
okay, so you know
a record of,
so
what with sessions, how much.
You can see your improvement.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what made me go to the sea, because one of the weeks I had to be in a cold shower for 10 minutes, and I found it so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why am I standing here in cold water for 10 minutes? And I live literally on the doorstep of the sea, so that's how the sea swimming, or the sea dipping, I call it.
I think it's interesting. It's a beautiful combination, cold water and breath work, but I don't do them together. So I do cold showers in the morning. I think we're the opposite, Marianne, because I can't get in the sea this time of year. In December.
See, for me the sea gets interesting now. Now it's getting colder.
I bet it's interesting.
It's about 8-9 degrees at the moment.
Okay,
so,
I can do the cold showers, but just the sea, that full immersion is a bit much for me. But I do like cold water. But it's fascinating because I think there's so many. I think maybe Wim Hof is it, because I think he's doing a lot of mouth breathing. You're breathing through the mouth when you do Wim Hof? Yeah. And I think that's stimulating to some degree that's stimulating the sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
So that's more yang, isn't it? That's more like, okay, let's, before you get in the water, to sort of charge you up. Do you think?
Well, it does that, but also his focus is on like your inner self, and that you're like, his record is being in the ice cold tank for just under 2 hours, and his core temperature staying exactly the same.
Okay.
And that he does that through the focus of of the breath, and like the.
I think
so. There's a lot of things. So although he always says to people, don't do breath work while you're in the water, because you can pass out.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So don't do it in the shower.
I'd probably just pass out in the sea at this time anyway.
Yeah.
But it is.
But I just find it interesting to have his philosophy, because his philosophy is not just based on ideas. He does a lot of work through the University of Nijmegen and a university or a hospital university in America. With what's happening inside the body, and a lot of people have become well from medical conditions using his his theories and his things. So definitely, even in your case, going back to the breath work and your journey since 2005, it has improved your health and your well-being.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was just going to say, that's what I really do. Although I haven't practiced his techniques a lot, I've listened to Wim, and I like that he goes after the science. He's had an awful lot of science done on himself, and all the science is out there unequivocally for breath work in general. Many different studies, and they all show the same thing, that that it helps depression and anxiety. It helps increase oxytocin, melatonin, all those good neurochemicals that just make us feel good. And the science of it is fascinating to me. I think actually a lot of people will know Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's written many books on the law of attraction, intention, changing brain chemistry. And I think he described the essential process of breath work. So when we're in the physiology, so when we breathe in, our sacrum, which is the second bottom bone of the spine, flexes back a little bit, and then as we breathe out, it flexes forwards, and this is only by fractions of a millimeter. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, so then if we're breathing, for a long enough duration, consciously enough, focused enough, not necessarily hard enough, because actually the rebirthing breath work I do can be very, very gentle. So it's really just about conscious, connected breathing, but the movement of the sacrum, it really starts to open up. It starts to move more, and then this pumps cerebrospinal fluid all the way up the spine. And if you think about the cranial bones, and then the spine and the sacrum, and you've got the coccyx below that. That's all one system, and this is really the the core of our body. So you've got the cerebrospinal fluid coming up, and then that's then bathing the brain with cerebrospinal fluid is. It's a salt solution charge. It's got an electrical charge to it. And that's when they do the tests. All the science is found. All these amazing neurochemicals are there. They're being increased. And I always say, it really is experiential. We can talk about the science and what's created, but it's just, in essence, it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. It's palpable, it's tangible, in terms of just feeling different, and feeling better, and feeling more empowered, more embodied. And I really, I just highly recommend it to every human being, because it's completely free. It's something everybody can access. And there's many different types. There's.
My sister, she has just done a 7-month breathwork coach training in Holland, which was like once a month at the weekend. But she's done it. I've always advised her to do body work, because she's had lots of trauma in her life, and her biggest trauma is losing her son when she was a single mum, in 2006, and that's so difficult to recover from. But anyway, I've done the Brennan School, and the Brennan, we do a lot of body work in the Brennan School as well, part of the process work, and not necessarily breath work, but body work, and letting energy and trauma move through the energy field and through the vertical power current, then, which is again is the energy field that runs along the spine. It's again, you're the same, the same, only on an energetic level. And but she's had so much benefit just from those 7 months, although she didn't pass as a practitioner, but it's really because her trauma is so deep that she had a lot of benefit, but for her it was hard to hold a client. But for her own healing process, it's just been amazing. But I knew it would be.
It's very powerful, heart opening stuff, and I think maybe if we look out into the world, Marianne, I think one of the problems is that everybody is so in their head, mind. It's these ancient teachings really are, they've absolutely nailed it. Mind is sort of the enemy. We're all suffering from this people call it monkey mind, but these sort of repetitive loops and negative self-talk that goes for all of us.
I always say to my clients, when I work as a therapist, the mind is the trickster.
It really is.
And look is how you think, and the words you say, your belief systems, because is it really true what you believe? Because for me as a Dutch national, it's quite interesting that even when we look at superstition, some of the things in Holland we say are totally opposite than superstitions in England. So what makes you believe a superstition? And it's in the mind.
What is that? There's this really great quote that I like. I think don't believe everything you think. That's it. Don't believe everything you think. I think that's a really good one.
And that's again when you practice breath work, and it's just when I say to people, it's the moment you pay attention to your thinking and you realize you're thinking and you're thinking negatively. The moment you notice your mind and your thoughts are taking it down this negative spiral, you then start focusing on your breath or counting your breath. The mind stops. Because it seems like humans can't do both things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We can't think and focus on the breath at the same
really,
time.
That's a really good way of describing it, actually. And
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And again, it just, it does it really after, usually, I mean, I find in my sessions, after 15 to 20 minutes of conscious connected breathing that we do in rebirthing, the energy, the sort of energy just drops out of everything goes to my heart, you know.
Yeah.
And this is where our real power is, you know. The heart is a place of, it's a place of bliss. It's a place of just intuitive knowing. It's a place of where we connect with other human beings, you know. We soften, and it's just a completely different perspective on life, on ourselves, and you know, I often describe breathwork and rebirthing as it's perhaps like a mini death in some ways.
It is because it's not, because we start seeing the world totally different to how we've made to believe the world is.
Absolutely. And I think when we die, this is just my own spiritual belief, but I think we go through life looking through, you know, an aperture of a certain size, don't we? And we have our whole gamut and realm of experiences within the aperture. I think when we die and the light body withdraws, this aperture really, really opens up completely. Like, okay, I see now why I had those experiences, you know, the lessons that I had to learn, why this awful thing happened to me, but actually what it taught me. And actually breathwork and rebirthing can be very similar. So your sort of perception of yourself and your life opens up a little bit.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, and you actually perceive, you know, certain challenges in a different way, and again, with all that softening and that heart opening experience, you know, that gives you, it just moves you to a plateau. You think, okay, well, I can cope with this now. I can deal with this. I know what I need to do with this area of my life that's been challenging. And it's very powerful.
So, Andrew, why are we not taught this for health benefits?
Why are we not taught this?
Yes.
I think because it's free and because it works so well. And I think if you look at a lot of very, very powerful healing modalities, you know, that work practically, tangibly, you know, that are proven in many ways, a lot of them have been just very, very shut down, ignored. You know, we live in our mainstream medical model is about drugging people to health, unfortunately. And you know.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview. It's actually a Belgian lady. She's interviewing Dr. Nassim Malhotra.
Ah, yes.
And they were talking about, because he's been quite an advocate of healthy living.
Yeah.
And you know, as a cardiologist, he sees a lot of people with serious, you know, heart conditions, and like he's the one that puts stents in people, you know. But he also is, you know, a big advocate of healthy living, you know, and looking at all natural things. And one of the things that they touched on, that like the food, the quality of the food, everything being, you know, not as good for you anymore, and it makes people sick by telling them to eat sugars and, you know, these horrible cereals and all that. But then it's the pharmaceuticals that then should make you better, you know. So it's like this whole model of big money, you know, where they make the big money is actually makes us ill, and then people go to them to try and make them better. Well, there's so much that's free.
I mean, it's tragic.
Or no, it's not necessarily free if you go and see a therapist.
But everybody can learn to breathe in a better way and to breathe more consciously, you know, both in their daily lives, but also, you know, if you can just create a space, you know, for twice a week, 2 or 3 times a week, for half an hour. I mean, I will rebirth myself, You know, I'll do rebirthing practice on myself, and I'm there for myself. But yeah, you're right, and it's completely free, and I think people should be taught this from a really, really young age.
It really should be in schools.
It should be in schools. Children at 5-6 years old can learn this. If you get into, there's a guy called James Nestor. He wrote a book maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think. It's probably really the definitive book on breath work and breath. It's just called Breathe, I think. James Nestor's book, Breathe. And you know, the science shows that sort of poor breathing, restrictive breathing, mouth breathing literally kills people. You know, people die 10 years younger because of
or it has to, like last week, we had Ellen, you know, on one of our interviews, and Ellen suffered from panic attacks. Now, I used to have panic attacks. And how I overcame the panic attacks is that I was 23. I remember it so well. When these life-changing events, you just remember it so well. We sold our house, bought another house, got a new GP. Again, went to my GP because my panic attacks always came with like feeling I was having a heart attack, and you know, my grandma died of her 7th heart attack. Goodness. So I always was worried I was going to follow in her footsteps.
Of course, yeah.
So this GP said, "Oh no, it's not anything physical." So he sent me to a therapist that did breathing exercises with me and grounding. So I had to sort of stand and feel the ground underneath my feet, and then bring it up and see what my pelvis was doing. And literally within 7 sessions, you know, I was just feeling so much better and so much more embodied.
Incredible.
Focusing, bring that breath down, you know, and then this person advised me to do yoga. So I've been practicing yoga since I was 20. I was 24 when I started doing yoga. So it's sort of a similar journey, you know. It's through being unwell, not physically unwell, but and then connecting to the breath. And
I'm so pleased that worked for you, Marianne, because I've had panic attacks myself, and I mean, they're absolutely terrifying. It feels like you're going to die. It's like death is imminent. I had those in my 20s and my 30s occasionally, and but I mean, what we know about the breath is unquestionably it brings the body into, you know, deep parasympathetic tone, and this is the place where the body heals. You know, most people maybe know that, you know, there's 2 sides to the nervous system, isn't there? There's the parasympathetic, which is rest, digest, and then unfortunately, it's an absolutely necessary part of life, sympathetic part, but most people seem to be in it all the time.
Yeah, whole Western living is all about, you know, much more, and
they're waking up in sympathetic dominance, and this is where all the, you know, the cortisol is created, all these stress hormones. But just breathing consciously will bring the body into parasympathetic dominance, and this is where the body can really, really heal. And I think this is why, you know, I've spent a long time sort of talking to people in communities with where people have got sort of autoimmune illness and things like Lyme disease and all the co-infections of Lyme and you know, long-term chronic health problems. And what you'll find about the people in this community is a lot of them are very, very clever. They've learned an awful lot. They've really learned to be their own doctors. And I mean, to my mind, they're more clued up than a lot of actual doctors are. And they know what they need to be, you know, to treat themselves. They know an awful lot about, you know, medical herbalism and supplements and, you know, sort of frequency healing and the whole gamut of sort of holistic healing. But often they just can't bring their body into that place of rest. So you can be taking the best supplements in the world, you can have the cleanest, nutritional program where you're eating organic food, really clean, no gluten, no grains, no sugar, no dairy, no coffee, no alcohol. But if your body can't be in parasympathetic dominance,
can't have that real rest point
for a little significant point, your body just can't heal.
No.
And this is what's really amazing about.
So if somebody would come and see you, do they just come for a certain number of sessions? Do you find there's change quite quickly?
Yeah, ideally, I would say ideally for quite a few sessions, if people haven't done breath work before. But often just in 1 or 2 sessions, what we're doing is we're giving the body a sort of completely new experience and a template of how the physiology can work differently. It's almost like, I think most people who've come to me to have breathwork sessions, they within 1 or 2 sessions they will have a completely different experience of their body, of their physiology, and how the whole mind-body interface functions, can just function and experience itself in a different way.
That's good that it's so quick, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've then got a template that they can carry forward into their life. I will show people techniques that they can do in their daily lives, so they don't need to sort of keep coming back to see me again and again and again. I did 10 sessions actually of my own of rebirthing with an amazing practitioner who's based in Bath. She's called Deborah Madison, and that was an incredible journey actually, because you really start to unravel sort of layers of your own trauma, of your own body. As you know, Marianne, from you studied many years in the Brennan School. Trauma, unresolved psychological conflict, it lives in the tissues.
Yeah, well,
it lives inside, literally in our bodies.
Well, in the Brennan School, they call them time capsules. They're in the field. They're in the energy field. Just the physical and the energy is not separate. We're all. It's all. Such a.
Absolutely. I like that phrase, time capsules.
They call them time capsules, and yes. So when you do time capsule healing in the Brennan School, you focus on a particular area, and you hold that, and you hold it, with an open heart and with a frequency, and then people start. Often the body shakes as well. Yeah. People start shaking.
Absolutely.
Or there's crying, or there's screaming, and the energy, the frozen energy of that time, a space, and very often it's not even something you can consciously, relate to something in particular, because a lot of trauma happens before we are cognitively, when we remember things.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then that energy runs through the vertical power current, and it goes out. And some people actually physically feel something go out to the top of their heads.
Wow. Yeah.
So and that is and I think when you are held by somebody that understands the process, either through healing or through, like in your case, the breath work, it's just so powerful.
It's
the witnessing,
very powerful.
Being witnessed in your vulnerability and in your pain. And and I personally, from a personal experience, is like I, as a 6-month-old baby, I was in hospital, and I was in hospital for 3 months.
Oh wow!
And I had operations on both my ears. Then I had tubes, and of course I don't remember it, but they put tubes on my elbows so it wouldn't touch my ears. And the interesting thing is, when I went through the healing school and through the process sessions, I could actually I started feeling these, my arms being held, and going through those feelings and allowing them to be there, and being held by a competent therapist. And it then changes you, because also in the time capsule theory. Inside of that frozen energy is the core of that child.
Yeah.
You know, and so what happens, you suddenly start to feel really young, because that really core energy gets released from those frozen time capsules, and it starts to, you know, come in with the rest of your energy. So people start getting a lot more energy.
That's
and they
integration,
start and it's that integration.
That's a beautiful story.
So that's the like the theory explained of you know, trapped energy from when we're really young, and where we have no cognitive memory yet. And everybody has that, you know, because we all have very simple, you know, traumas from you trying to touch something hot and your parents said no, and you know, and if that happens repeatedly, you know, you as a baby you like freeze.
Absolutely.
These moments,
Absolutely. And as you say, Marianne, I think well, it's interesting because the way trauma works is trauma doesn't understand time at all.
Yeah.
So even if something happened to you 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, however long it is, the body responds like it's happening to you now in the moment.
Yes.
And I think most of us, or many of us at least, you know, we're kind of existing in this maladaptive state, and we don't really recognize or realize how much energy is frozen inside of us until it's released and it starts to flow, and it's like, oh my goodness. And I think it's so important what you just mentioned about the process of being witnessed. You know, and for a lot of people, it's really that, it can be that simple. I actually remember my very first module on my rebirthing course, and you know, we would do a lot of sort of practices in the morning, inner child work and discussions and group work and activities, and then in the afternoon we would go into a duo, a couple, and we would take turns at rebirthing each other. And it was my very first session. I'll never forget it. And about 15 minutes in, I just started crying. And it was because there was another person there with me, and I mean, this person wasn't doing an awful lot, but they were perfect in just witnessing my being. Yeah. And as I started crying, she said to me, she said, "It's okay." She said, "You're safe and you're loved," something like that. And it was like the most perfect thing I'd ever heard. It was so beautiful, and you know, really unraveled an awful lot in me just from hearing that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just all we need, which we haven't had from our parents or our primary caregivers when we were little. So it's not just about breathing. It's, you know, that's the sort of rebirthing process. I think it runs the whole spectrum of, you know, psychotherapeutic, you know, practice and trauma.
Yeah.
And
so do you think, you know, I'm like, we met through the COVID times here, you know, having done the Brennan School for 4 years, I've done core energetics, which is also work with the body. I didn't finish that, but I did like 2.5 years in the training as well. And in the Brennan School, you have to have therapies to actually be able to move on to the next year. So you have to have 18 therapy sessions. And I ended up doing core energetic therapy sessions. And my love for body work made me actually go into the core energetic training as well. But I also have a degree in psychology, and you know, I have all this attention, perception, you know, all these years that you do, you know, behavioral psychology and all that. And for me, going into COVID, and particularly when the masks were coming on, and looking at small children and the response small children had, because children feel safe through facial expressions and through and I remember cycling down the road when you were only allowed to have your one exercise a day, and parents literally pulling their 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds away from the road because the
Yeah.
cyclists were coming past, and all I could think about the trauma for these very young children, you know, and what's going to happen in a few years' time.
Absolutely.
You know, in the psyche of these very young children.
Yeah, I found it absolutely tragic, Marianne. You can imagine I was in the midst of studying, you know, breath work and then looking at these kids, as you say, you know, masked up, and yeah, I think the important thing, I saw a video, like, you know, it's like the babies, because they rely on facial expressions to mirror, to get their sense of feedback from the outside world,
and the feeling of safety,
and their sense of self as well.
Yeah.
You know, because babies are really just mirroring the nervous system of the mother or the primary caregiver, and you know, they get access to the nervous system through expression. And this is all ties in with Stephen Porges' work and actually the polyvagal theory and breath. But yeah, I mean, to my mind, there was no question, you know, if you looked at the science, you really looked at the science, there's absolutely no need for children to be wearing masks, I think.
Well, we know now from the COVID inquiry that there was never any science. And
no need.
Again, being Dutch, the Dutch Prime Minister, they didn't bring masks until the 1st of December, but he even then still said there's no science, but we have to toe the line with the rest of Europe. That was on the 1st of December.
Yeah.
So they openly said there was no science. And I just sometimes felt like screaming, like, stop doing this, you're traumatizing. And I have had a young chap that came to me for some healing sessions, and this was earlier this year, and he actually said that, you know, and I know he probably was slightly on the spectrum, autistic spectrum, but that doesn't really matter. He came to me for help because he struggled coming out of that time not wearing a mask again. You know, and so he struggled initially having to wear it, but then he struggled emotionally with having to start showing his face again. You know, and you know, having been a therapist for like 23 years now, you know, all I think about, what are they doing to people, you know? And sometimes I just felt like screaming.
I'd forgotten about that, actually, because I think a lot of people became quite addicted. It was almost like having a dummy or becoming a smoker, or, you know, because they were so conscious of having them on, and they couldn't take them off in the end. It was they sort of became dependent on them. I hadn't really thought about that for a while. But yeah, I mean, to my mind, I looked at the science, and I'm trying to think of his name. Dunne Rancourt, PhD, Canadian PhD. I think in 2020 he published all of the sort of prior definitive. It was like a meta-analysis of the all the studies that have been done on masks over the years, all different types of masks. You know, masks worn in different environments, what for viruses. Unequivocally showed they did little to nothing. That was a big meta study.
Well, the only mask that could slow down is the FFP2, if you have that the nurses wear, but particularly the one that your face is measured for, because like I worked at the time in a care home for severely disabled children, and there all the nurses, you know, there's always 2 nurses on shift, and they were actually measured. They all had their own personal, you know, masks, and those are the only ones that there is some reduction, because I've read all those studies as well about the and there's some studies in like Asia that were done, and they actually said the cloth ones, so this was a hospital setting where nurses were asked to wear masks, cloth ones, surgical ones, and the FFP2 ones, and the cloth ones increase infections, the surgical ones did as well, and then the other ones slightly reduced it. And this is in a hospital setting when they were single use only, when they were washed in like the cloth ones were washed, and the surgical ones were exposed in the right way. You know, and I just go like, yes, it's just.
Yeah.
It's just incredible, and
No,
then I'm standing. The first time mask came in, I one of my headlights went, and I stood outside Halford and watched people's behavior with the mask, and putting that on, putting that under their chin, putting them in their pockets, in their handbags, and I thought, well, if you want to make anything worse and spread anything more, just tell people to do this, and that's what happened, because 6 weeks later the infection rates never went down, they went up. And people still didn't question.
Absolutely. I went through Dunne Rancourt's, all his meta study with a fine tooth comb. It was like, wow, okay, because obviously I'd never, in the middle of 2020, I didn't know anything about masks. I looked at it and I thought, wow, there's absolutely no evidence that anything works. But then I think, like you said, just common sense.
Yeah.
Re-inhaling this filthy bit of cloth,
and
all day long. I never put one on my face, fortunately.
And now they actually found, because there's plastic, they've actually found little tiny bits of plastic in people's lungs now.
Yeah. And also for the planet, anybody who's half conscious of those, they were everywhere.
I know, they were in the sea. I've stopped them, and I say, why you wear this? And you're so worried you're gonna pass on COVID, and you look at people that don't wear them, but you just drop them down in the street, and you let somebody else pick up your dirty mask.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Very sad. Very sad. I just kept breathing.
Yeah,
all the way through.
Yeah. Well,
as you did as well, I think.
Well, yes. Well, at work, of course, we were, had to wear them, and but one of my colleagues lifted up her mask to have a drink, and she had blue lips. So I said to her, okay, and because I was a senior, so I told her to take her mask off, and she said, no, I can't. I said, yes, my responsibility is also for you as a staff member, because what am I going to do if you're going to collapse now? And they had the shields. I just said to her, just wear a face shield, but she has serious lung issues. So for her, wearing a mask was so damaging, and people seem to have lost the, ability to think.
Yeah. No, I think we're definitely on agreement with that, Marianne.
Yes, yeah. So do you feel now this has got a little bit better, that people actually coming to you, that they feel they have been traumatized through the last 3 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people really, really struggled in different ways. Some people, I think, managed to find themselves in that period a little bit and create some space for themselves. Everybody's story is different, as we know, right across the board. But yeah, I think in terms of breathwork generally, there seems to have been really, really unprecedented interest in the last sort of 3 years. It's become, people have, I think, through Wim Hof has popularised it, and other people as well.
His BBC program.
Oh, he's on the BBC though.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Okay. They did a 10 series on the BBC, and okay. I did look at it a little bit, and I personally wouldn't have approached it like that, because they literally started with dunking some of these famous people down an ice hole, and that was on the first episode, and I thought, why do you do this? That would put so many people off, because although I do cold showers, but I definitely don't want to be dunked down an ice hole.
I don't think many people do.
No, and it's not how you start anyway.
Yeah, I would, in terms of breathwork or that.
And I'm pretty sure that probably was at the end of their. I don't know how long they were with Wim Hof, but they probably were with him maybe 7 days. Okay. And that probably happened on one of the last days in reality, because we know how they change everything just to make programs interesting.
Start gently, I think, is the key.
Yeah, definitely.
Start gently and just easy. And, as we've mentioned, breathwork and this sort of activity can, it can elicit quite intense emotions, but sometimes just laying down, supine on your back, one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly, and just conscious connected breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, and getting that moving as if it's a fountain.
Yeah.
And just really tuning into the body as an anchor, and everything that's happening in the body, all the sensations, and just very, very gently. That's just a perfect way to start. And then I often say to people when I have somebody in session, I say, if anything gets too intense, if you're feeling anything that's too much for you, or you're starting to, remember traumatic events or feeling things in your body that are very uncomfortable, you have the volume control on your breath. You can turn it right down to 1 or to 0. And tone it right down, and that will bring those feelings in the body down for you. If people want to get started on their own practice, I can highly recommend actually the practice that I started with in 2009, which is on YouTube. It's got a very unusual Irish name. It's called Eru Olas.
Maybe it's an idea to put a link to that
we can put that in the comments.
Yes.
It's the whole program is on YouTube and it's free. It's very powerful, and
but of course anybody that wants to could contact you.
You can certainly, absolutely.
Yeah, put your email address.
We can put my details in.
Yeah.
Based in Hastings, East Sussex. So for sure. But I think again, just going where we started, this is our native, organic, innate technology, and it's free. And
is there anything in your training? Sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
That takes this back to old times? Did they do this in the olden days, or in the East? I just sometimes think that. In the East, they seem to be so much more wise than we are in the West, even though the West thinks that we're all,
So absolutely, I mean, there's the old, as old as yoga is. We don't know really how old yoga is. I don't know when Patanjali wrote his Yoga Sutras, but it was a couple of thousand years ago. But certainly. So what they call pranayama was always an integral part of hatha yoga, classical hatha yoga. Pranayama is breathwork practice. It's breath practice. And in yoga they've done many people know the alternate nostril breathing.
Yes, and holding your.
That's the one.
Yeah.
But also they have the Bhastrika. The warrior's breath. There's Brahmari Pranayam, which is the hummingbee breath. There's many types. So it really is, and it was always an integral part of yoga, breath work. So, and that goes back to the whole idea that the human body is the alchemical vessel. It's the alchemical vestibule that can be honed, transformed, alchemized, fundamentally changed, and that's to my mind, it's an absolute truth. And it's funny, isn't it? Throughout all of time and all of history, people have sought thousands of different ways to change their brain chemistry, from ingesting everything under the sun, from hallucinogens to alcohol, some drug, street drugs, very, very destructive, that kill people very quickly. But for sure, a guaranteed way to change your brain chemistry for the better and make you feel pretty damn good is just through conscious breathing techniques. So, and it's all free. Well, I think this is probably a really good note to end this on. Yeah, for sure.
And really lovely. Thank you for being here. And
thanks so much for having me, Marianne. It's been really lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.